The luxurious first-class cabin fell silent when the flight attendant stepped in front of Sophia. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This section is for first-class passengers only." The stares from wealthy travelers cut into her like knives as her legitimate ticket was openly questioned. No one could imagine that within minutes, Eduardo Vasquez, Sophia's devoted husband and the billionaire majority owner of the very airline they were flying, would walk through that door and completely flip the power dynamic in this cabin, filled with snap judgments. Sofia Mendez adjusted the watch on her wrist, a gift from Eduardo that reminded her of their first meeting. At 35, her simple yet graceful dress stood in sharp contrast to the designer outfits and glittering jewelry around her. The cabin of Stellar Airways gleamed, wide leather seats, the scent of champagne, and attendants moving with polished precision. Eduardo had insisted she enjoy this flight alone, a reward for the successful charity gala she had organized. "You deserve all the luxury in the world," he'd told her, before being called away to an emergency meeting. He had promised to meet her at the resort later. Taking a steady breath, Sophia handed her first-class ticket to the attendant. For once, she allowed herself to embrace luxury. "I'm sorry, but this area is for first-class passengers only," Camilla Reynolds, the head flight attendant, repeated, her gaze narrowing on Sophia's modest attire. Her tone sliced through the air with practiced superiority. Tall, with blonde hair and a tight bun, Camilla wore her uniform not as a sign of service but as a badge of authority. "I have a first-class ticket," Sophia said calmly, extending her boarding pass. Camilla plucked it from her fingers delicately as though afraid of contamination. She tilted it under the lights, lips pursed in doubt. "There seems to be an error," she finally replied. "Perhaps you were entered into the system incorrectly." A man in a tailored suit lowered his newspaper, his gold cufflinks glinting. "Happens all the time," he announced loudly. "Economy is far too crowded these days." Several passengers looked up, some smirking, others simply curious. A couple dressed in matching designer brands whispered to each other, their eyes darting toward Sophia. Camilla's false smile returned. "Let me check if there's a seat for you in the back of the plane. I'm sure you'll be much more comfortable there." Her emphasis on comfortable left no doubt. Sophia didn't belong. A flush crept up Sophia's neck, but her voice stayed even. "Please check again. My husband purchased this seat specifically for me." "Your husband?" A woman draped in diamonds chuckled cruelly. "Darling, everyone says that when they're fishing for upgrades. What's next? You'll tell us he's a CEO?" Laughter rippled across the cabin. Camilla gestured to another crew member, exchanging smug glances. Sophia's fingers brushed the watch Eduardo had given her when they first met, back when she was a flight attendant herself. The cool metal steadied her. She had endured prejudice before, but never from those in her own profession. Nearby, a businessman tapped impatiently on his armrest. "Some of us have meetings to catch. Can we resolve this?" Camilla straightened her already perfect posture. "Please wait here while I sort this out," she said smoothly. "Perhaps it's best if you wait outside at the boarding gate." Her words carried no suggestion. It was a dismissal. Embarrassment, indignation, and anger clashed inside Sophia. She could easily reveal her identity, the wife of Eduardo Vasquez, owner of Stellar Airways, and silence them all. But why should she need her husband's name to claim the dignity she already deserved? The cabin manager appeared, his hat positioned with military precision. "Ma'am, there seems to be an issue with your reservation. I'll need you to accompany me off the aircraft while we resolve this." His tone was polite, but unyielding. The weight of passengers' stares pressed down on her, some pitying, some scornful. A woman dripping in sapphires clicked her tongue, while a young executive hid a smirk behind his laptop. "My ticket is valid," Sophia said, her voice quiet but steady. "I have every right to be here." Camilla's smile hardened. "Security. Protocols, ma'am. We can't allow just anyone in first class without proper verification." Just anyone. The words hung in the air, dripping with insult. It was at that moment the aircraft door opened with precise timing, revealing the commanding presence of Eduardo Vasquez. Standing tall at 6'2", broad-shouldered, and dressed in a perfectly tailored navy Tom Ford suit, He radiated effortless authority. The faint silver at his temples only added to his distinguished, powerful aura. The cabin froze. Conversations died instantly as his steel blue eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating before fixing on Sophia, his wife, being challenged by the staff. His face betrayed little, but the subtle tightening around his eyes signaled a storm, brewing beneath his calm exterior. Sophia. His deep, resonant voice filled the entire cabin without strain. Is there a problem? The flight manager and Camilla exchanged panicked glances, their earlier confidence dissolving. Sir, we're just resolving a small seating confusion, the manager stammered, his tone suddenly deferential. Eduardo advanced down the aisle with unhurried certainty, each step deliberate, as though he not only owned the aircraft, but the very air within it. Passengers instinctively shrank back, making way. That's my wife's seat, isn't it? 2A. His words carried a quiet edge, his Spanish accent adding a melodic gravity that only deepened the authority behind them. Your wife? Camilla whispered, color draining from her face. The realization rippled through the cabin like electricity. A billionaire. Right here. Eduardo reached Sophia, resting one hand lightly at the small of her back, a gesture both protective and commanding.
His understated yet unmistakably expensive watch gleamed on his wrist. Yes. Sofia Mendez Vasquez, my wife. Has there been an issue with her seat? Though polite, the question was weighted like steel, demanding an answer. The manager faltered.
His composure cracking. Mr. Vasquez, we had no idea. We were just verifying. Eduardo's eyes narrowed, pinning both the manager and Camilla in turn. Verifying what exactly? Whether she belongs in first class based on her appearance? A suffocating silence settled over the cabin. The flight attendant's arrogance evaporated. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, realizing the enormity of what had just unfolded. Mr. Vasquez, we didn't know. Camilla stammered, trembling now, her polished smile gone, her badge quivering with the shake of her chest. Sweat gathered along her hairline, streaking her flawless makeup. Eduardo didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone shifted the power dynamic entirely. At 45, he carried himself with the calm authority of a man who had built an empire from nothing. Unyielding, deliberate, unstoppable. Clearly, he said simply, the single word landing like a verdict. His gaze softened briefly as it returned to Sophia, noting her quiet composure despite the humiliation she had endured. Then turning back to the crew, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. Did you know Sophia was once the youngest head flight attendant in this airline's history? She understands more about protocol and service than everyone in this cabin combined. Passengers exchanged shocked looks. The woman dripping in diamonds who had mocked Sophia suddenly buried herself in the in-flight magazine, twisting her wedding band nervously. The businessman who had sneered at delays now stared intently at his shoes. She once saved a man's life mid-flight by recognizing his symptoms before he even knew something was wrong. Eduardo continued, his pride evident now. The airline awarded her a commendation, one still displayed at headquarters. Though I wonder, his gaze sliced through the crew, if any of you have actually seen it. The cabin manager swallowed hard, tugging at his collar as a bead of sweat slid down his temple. Camilla's face had gone chalk white. Eduardo's voice remained steady, calm, but its weight crushed the arrogance that had dared to challenge his wife. I asked for the flight to wait, Eduardo said evenly, his gaze sweeping the cabin. Because I wanted to surprise my wife. It seems I arrived at a rather opportune moment. The pause before that final word was deliberate, its weight, landing like an understated threat. The manager, clutching his cap against his chest like a shield, visibly shrank under Eduardo's gaze. As the majority shareholder of Stellar Airways, Eduardo continued, voice steady but edged with steel. I am deeply concerned by what I've just witnessed. The words detonated like a silent bomb. A passenger near the window gasped. Camilla staggered back, gripping the leather seat for support, her knuckles white. Mr. Vasquez, the manager stammered, his voice cracking. I assure you, this was an isolated misunderstanding. Eduardo raised a single hand. The gesture alone silenced him. Misunderstandings have consequences, don't they? His tone was calm, conversational even, but carried an unmistakable threat. He pulled out his phone, typing with swift, precise motions. I've just sent a message to the board. Starting tomorrow, every Stellar Airways employee will undergo anti-discrimination training. His eyes locked on Camilla, pinning her in place. Miss Reynolds, you'll have the honor of being the first participant. Camilla swallowed hard, her career flashing before her eyes. The silver wings on her chest, once a badge of pride, now felt like a weight of shame. Eduardo turned to the manager. As for the open position of Director of Customer Experience, I believe my wife, with her years of service and her experience today, will be the ideal candidate. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, genuine surprise flickering across her face before she composed herself. Eduardo then addressed the passengers, his voice carrying through the cabin without rising. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. As compensation, champagne will be complimentary throughout the flight. Then, lowering his tone just enough for nearby ears to catch, he told Camilla, see that my wife is properly attended to for the remainder of this flight. Your future with this airline depends on it. The once imperious flight attendant now stood humbled, her arrogance shattered. She motioned quickly for the crew to resume service, every movement careful and deferential. The transformation was complete. In minutes, she had been reduced from untouchable authority to chastened servant. Passengers exchanged looks, some embarrassed, others filled with newfound respect for Sophia, who had carried herself with quiet dignity throughout the ordeal. Later at the beachfront resort, Sophia and Eduardo sat on the private balcony of their suite, a glass of wine in each hand. The golden sunset stretched across the ocean, softening the weight of the day. You always knew how to make an entrance, Sophia teased lightly, a small smile playing at her lips. Eduardo chuckled. That wasn't quite how I planned our reunion. But I'll admit, seeing their faces was satisfying. Sophia looked out at the sea, thoughtful. For years, I've avoided relying on your name. I wanted to be respected for my own merits, not as Mrs. Vasquez. And you've succeeded, Eduardo said firmly. Your charity event raised more money than any other in the Foundation's history. Still, Sophia's fingers brushed the watch on her wrist. Sometimes I miss the independence, the career I was building. Eduardo studied her carefully. That's why I created the position of Director of Customer Experience. It isn't a favor, it's because no one is more qualified. And I was going to give it to you as an anniversary gift. Sophia blinked, surprised. You planned this before the flight? He smiled softly. Yes. And after today, you know exactly what needs to be changed. Her eyes glistened, emotions welling up. You never stopped believing in me, even when I doubted myself. Eduardo reached for her wrist, brushing the watch gently. Remember what I told you when I gave you this? That time is the only true luxury. It matters how we spend it, and with whom. Sophia's heart swelled. She thought back to the day they'd first met, when she was a flight attendant serving coffee in first class. He hadn't fallen in love with a billionaire's wife. He'd fallen in love with Sofia Mendez, the woman who treated every passenger, from CEOs to children traveling alone, with the same respect. The sunset glowed across the horizon as she took his hand. So, Eduardo, she said with a smile, what does the future Director of Customer Experience think about transforming Stellar Airways? Sophia's laughter was light, her spirit renewed. I think it's time, she said, for a new chapter. Sadly, too many people are still judged every day by their looks, clothing, or background, long before anyone understands their true worth. Have you ever gone through something like this yourself, or seen someone else unfairly underestimated? Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more uplifting stories like this one, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that true value goes far deeper than appearances. Until the next story, one that will challenge your perspective and remind us all why treating people with dignity and respect will always matter most.